Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to the AALS Arc of Career, a session for first-time attendees. We're very excited to be offering this session to everyone today for our first-time attendees, or even for people who have been to the meeting before and wanted to come and hear what we had to share with you. So welcome. My name is Jason Palmer. I am the chair of the Arc of Career Committee, and I'm a professor of law at Stetson University College of Law. This is actually my third year as chair of the committee. I'll be rotating off the committee, but it's been the Arc of Career is a wonderful. There are other Arc of Career programs. I encourage you guys to attend them if you have the opportunity. They're very informative and a little different for AALS, kind of more of a professional development and where you are in your career programming. So please look on the schedule for the Arc of Career. For the Arc of Career sessions, but this one today is a first-time session for new attendees. We welcome you. Let me briefly introduce my panelists quickly, so I can share with you who we have. We have a very distinguished panel today to talk about some hopefully topics that will interest you as first-time attendees. So first of all, we have Erwin Chemerinsky, who is the Dean and Jesse H. Chopper Distinguished Professor of Law at Berkeley Law. He is also our president of AALS currently. And our next panelist is Timothy Duff. Timothy Duff is a visiting assistant professor of legal practice skills at Suffolk University Law School and the current chair of the new law professor section. We have Mark Alexander, who is the Arthur J. Conrad Dean and Professor of Law at Villanova University and is the president-elect of AALS. So he will be taking over during the latter part of this meeting. He will take over as president. And then finally, we have Judy Areen, who is a former dean of Georgetown University Law School and the current executive director of AALS. There's a wealth of knowledge on this panel. I'm excited for them to share some thoughts and ideas with you. So I'm going to first turn it over to Judy to share some introductory remarks. And then after that, we will turn to the panelists, and we have some questions that I've devised to present to our panelists, which we will be going through. And I please encourage any of you, if you have questions or thoughts while the panelists are speaking, please feel free to share those in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat, and I'll be happy to share your questions with the panelists. We will also hopefully have some time at the end of the session to also engage in some question and answer, but do not feel constrained to wait until the end to put your questions in the chat. All right, well, thank you very much. And with that, I will turn the mic over to Judy.
Thank you, Jason, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 annual meeting. We're delighted that you are here. Back in January of 2020, which was our last in-person meeting, and it happened to be here in Washington, D.C., there were just over 2,000 people in attendance. As of this morning, nearly 4,000 faculty and senior administrators have registered to join this year's meeting. So while we regret that we can't be in person, there are pluses to being virtual, and one of them is so many more people are here in attendance. As Jason mentioned, this session only goes back about 6 or 7 years. Before that, it was just catch as catch can. When you came to your first meeting, I can remember you wander around and other people seem to know what to do and where to go. Our goal today is to provide some basic tips this morning that might make the meeting work for you. Now, most of the programs throughout this meeting are put on by one of our 104 sections. As you know, we have multiple sections depending on your interests. So there's scholarly sections on tort law or criminal law or international law. And there are lots done by particular administrative area or topic as well. We recommend that you try to attend sessions put on by sections in the subjects that you teach or are interested in writing in. I can remember my first annual meeting back in 1973. It was in New York, and I was scheduled to teach family law for the first time, but I hadn't picked a case book. And that year, the family law section put on a panel that included the authors of most of the case books that were then available. And it was really helpful to hear from them and their explanation of how they picked the topics in their case book. That first session also established some professional friendships that have lasted ever since for me. And I suggest that can be your experience too. One friend put it this way: be fearless. Introduce yourself to panelists, and you can do it through the chat. Your goal should be to be on their radar screen so that in the future, you might be able to send perhaps a draft paper that you're working on for their comments and suggestions. We also encourage you to join at least one or multiple sections. It's easy to do. Just go to our website and there's a section you'll easily find, or a page where you can indicate the sections you'd like to join. Sections not only put on programs at this meeting, but increasingly sections are meeting throughout the year with their members, either on new legal developments or through offering webinars, but also through social sessions for the members of the section. One thing I want to assure you, you can attend any session at this meeting, whether or not you're a member of the section. I remember one year someone said they thought they could only go to a section meeting if they were a member. Absolutely not. A lot of us can remember the experience of attending a section entirely outside our field, but learning an approach or a pedagogy from it that was really helpful to our own work. So explore. It will be more difficult to meet people in your field at a virtual meeting, but many sections are holding networking sessions, and I urge you to go ahead and attend some. So welcome to the 2022 annual meeting. May you find it educational, even stimulating, and perhaps even fun. Let me turn it back to you, Jason.
Great. Thank you, Judy. So before I turn to our panelists and the first question I have for them, let me just mention that AALS just put in the chat a message that if you're interested in joining AALS sections, there's a website you can visit, and the link has been placed in the chat. So please feel free to go to the chat, click on that link, and join sections that you might be interested in.
Let me interrupt and just thank Clarissa Ortiz, who is the wonderful associate director who oversees all our sections and has just done a wonderful job, even during this pandemic, of getting sections to be more and more active. So thank you, and it's a good example of her great work. Thank you, Clarissa.
Great, thank you. All right, so let me turn to our first question, and I'll direct our first question to Erwin and Mark. And I'll ask them, what do you wish you had known as a new professor at your first AALS meeting? And what would you want to know if this panel had existed when you attended your first meeting?
Most of all, I want to say welcome to everybody. Welcome to this conference. Welcome to the AALS. The AALS is many things, but one of the most important is it's a scholarly society. We're a learned society of law teachers and law administrators. And this is the major national scholarly conference each year. I'm thrilled and honored that unless an impeachment occurs between now and Saturday, I'll become president of AALS for 2022, and Mark will then follow me in 2023. My first AALS conference was in January of 1981 in Cincinnati. I think it's the only time AALS has ever done an annual conference in Cincinnati. And I admit that my reaction was much like what Judy described. I felt completely lost. I was overwhelmed by the number of programs and sessions, wasn't sure where to go or when to go to the sessions. I think the question, therefore, Jason, you ask is a really important one. I'd say three things, and they all echo what Judy said. One is not to limit myself to the programs in my field. When I first started going to AALS, what I would simply do is look and see where were the programs in, say, constitutional law and federal courts, the subjects that I teach in, and not pay much attention to the rest of the program. And sometimes those sessions were terrific and very helpful in my teaching and scholarship. Sometimes, some years I was disappointed in them. That's inevitable in a large conference. As the years went by, though, I spent much more time looking at all of the sessions and picking those that were just of interest to me, in addition to those in my field. And I found that once I did that, there wasn't a year that I left the SS conference really excited about some of the programs that I attended and some of the things that I learned from them. If you just flip through the program, it's such an intellectual feast in so many areas. And this is a chance to go and learn about things as well as to hear about the things in my field. The second thing is that we're all law teachers and law administrators. We all like to talk about what we do, what we teach, what we write about, the administrative tasks that we handle. I am by nature very shy. I was a painfully shy child, and hard for me to go up to people that I don't know and introduce myself. I wish I had as a new law teacher. What I've seen is I so enjoy when people come up to me and want to talk about my field, talk about case books, talk about articles, have developed many relationships from that, just as Judy said. Often people I meet will then send me drafts of their articles and we'll correspond. So don't hesitate to go up to the people who have written the case books in your field or the articles you've read. Don't hesitate to talk to them about how they teach particular topics or about what you're writing about. They'll really appreciate it, and it can form long-term relationships. And the third thing that I learned was the importance of arranging time to see friends who are in the conference, that there is a social benefit to the conference, even an online social benefit. And I came to realize that over time. I'm sure that there are people from your school who are part of this that maybe you don't get to talk to enough there. The people you went to law school with, or people you met at New Law Teachers Conference, or people you clerked with. Or the summer after my second year of law school, I shared an office with somebody, then became a law professor. And SS was the time that we were able to get together. And so as the years went by, I would, in advance of the conference or at the conference, make more of a point of trying to identify people that this was an opportunity to see. And again, I know that it's different online than in person, but even online contacts are nice with people. Renewing contacts that we might have lost, seeing old friends is special, and SS really provides that opportunity.
Great, thank you. Mark.
Yeah, so Erwin and Judy have said the things I want to say, but I just would want to maybe just offer a different perspective. And I think it's also important, perhaps, that Judy and Erwin have said these things, because it's not like there's some magic that we're discovering. We're just trying to give some guidance for how to approach this time. So I think the other thing which I would say, just to add to this conversation, is to remember that all of us we love the law. We love talking about the law. We love reading. We love writing. We love talking. That's what we do. We are here because we are nerds of the law. And this is like a special home for those of us who love to talk about the law. And so I would say welcome it in that regard. And then to put a slightly different angle on what's being said, realize that if you're teaching a particular subject, if I'm con law, for example, election law, those are my fields, there's going to be a few, but only a few panels that are particularly in my field. There's countless panels every day, and a small number will be your field specifically. So, when you look at the schedule, you realize, like, yeah, there's something you can do every day that may be your specific field or adjacent, but most of it is not what you teach and write about. The vast majority, it's like administrative law, bankruptcy, torts, contracts. You pick a subject, it's not yours. So understand that when we talk about going to other panels, as Judy and Erwin talk about, yeah, that's most of what happens is something that you are not somehow expert in. So welcome that, and welcome it in the context, again, that you love the law. Everyone on this currently, you've made this choice to be a law professor. Great choice. It's a great job. It's a great career, but it's because you love talking about the law. So just talk about it with other folks. And again, think about those connections. I think it was important how Erwin was talking about that. And also the other category I'd mentioned, add to Erwin's, is remember, all of us went to law school. So it may be that our old professor is doing a presentation. It's another way to connect back with our alma mater. So in addition to all the other categories Erwin mentioned, that's another perhaps organizing principle by which you might want to choose what you do. So go see lots of different panels, et cetera. The other thing I would also mention, and we will be able to do some of it virtually, but also I would make a plug for next year's annual meeting and all the years going forward. When we are in person, there's a ton, so much happens outside of the panels. So really what you're going to do is make sure you are open for meeting people outside of the panels. We are more constrained perhaps by the virtual format in that you literally can't quite walk the same way, but you can still, even in a virtual format, you can find ways to connect with people and make sure you do that. So maybe you're in this session right now, click the participants button, you say, oh my gosh, there's my old law school friend. Click to chat room and say, hey, let's talk. Are you done after this panel to meet? That's what will happen in person. So make it happen virtually too. But so much happens in the hallways physically, and it can happen virtually as well. So I would encourage you as you move forward to think about that as well. And that was, by the way, the number one thing, that last part is the number one piece of advice that I got when I went to ALS my second time, when I was talking to my associate dean about going the second time, because I didn't feel like I got a lot out of it the first time, because all I did is I walked into a panel, sat down, listened, and then walked out. So really make sure you get to talk to all these folks.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Tim or Judy, anything you wanted to add to that before we move on to the next question?
Covered it for me. Tim, how about you?
Well, it's maybe been said already, but I think one of the things is that even though the annual meeting is large and can be intimidating, it's really a lot of small groups. And that's something that I kind of wish I had known when I first started. My first annual meeting was recognizing that all of those people, the 4,000 people who are going to be attending this week, that those are a lot of small groups. And they want to interact with people and connect with people. And if you keep that in mind, it's less imposing, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll just add it. My first meeting, again, in person, it was in San Diego in 2009, I think was San Diego. And I went with people from my law school, of course, and I thought I was going to hang out, I was going to go to a session, and I knew people, but they were my law school friends, and all my law school colleagues went their own way, right? They were doing exactly what we're talking about doing. And it was overwhelming because now I'm in this place with 3,000 other people, and the people I thought I knew and I was going to be with, I didn't know. So again, taking advantage of that and the small groups and trying to, it's hard to kind of like work your way in, but it's really not, because people are going to be welcoming and do everything that we've been talking about and talk, and welcome the opportunities to talk about their case books, their panel presentation. So I think it's been excellent advice on how to start to meet people, which leads me to my next question, which I will start off with Mark and then go to Tim, and that's, how do I get involved in section leadership if that's something I'm interested in?
Yeah, I guess I could answer just a one-word answer and give it to Tim and just say, go. And to slightly elaborate on that before turning it to Tim, I think it is important to go because, the only way to get to, The only way to be involved in leadership is to go and learn what's happening. I don't think anyone would presume to walk into a section that they've never been part of and walk in and say, well, I'm going to go run this section today, because you don't yet know what's happening. So I think the first step is literally just go to the meeting, go to the panel presentations, go to the organizational meetings, and then start to talk to the folks and say, hey, you know what, this is really interesting to me. And I'd like to know how I could get involved. And I think that what will happen is, before you know it, you will start to have those opportunities. But I think it's really like, go, be present, make yourself known, and then things will start to happen. And I don't think that there's a unique formula, but I think in reality, it is as with any organization. If you think you want to get involved in leadership, go get to know what's happening, and make it a point to tell people that you're interested in being engaged.
So I think get involved with this section. But let me just start by saying that I'm very honored to be on this panel, and I'm delighted to talk about AAS. And also congratulations to Erwin and Mark for the leadership, and a thank you as well. I'll tell you, getting involved in the section, I'll just tell you my experience. And I talked just a moment ago about the annual meeting being very imposing, but really being a small groups. My first annual meeting was when it was in San Francisco in, I think it was about 2017. And I was actually presenting at something, and I didn't quite realize how big AAS was. And I got there, and I started realizing there are a lot of people here. And it is when you're physically there, it is a very large and imposing meeting. But it really does break down into small groups. And getting involved in a section is really partly showing up. I began I'll tell you the story of how I became involved with the new law professors section. I was one afternoon, I was looking through the program, and I saw an interesting program. And here the title was Getting By with a Little Help from My Friends, Mentorship in Teaching and Scholarship. And I thought that sounds kind of interesting. And I went down to the presentation and just kind of wandered in, and felt like an imposter, obviously, and found out that there were just people there, and everyone was interested. And after the program ended, I went up and I started speaking with the people who had presented and some of the leadership there. And that was really my beginning with the new law professors section. And I became involved with the section, and then gradually became involved with the leadership. And this year I've been the chair of this section. And one thing about AAS, I think Judy mentioned that there are 104 sections or so. That's a lot of sections. And I see it as it breaks down into kind of two big areas, one being your area of expertise, whatever that might be. And then there are a lot of sections about being a professor. And sometimes those are administrative matters, but also they're about about teaching and about scholarship, about service. And for example, I sometimes attend Balance of Legal Education section, the Teaching Methods section. These sections talk about how to go about the business of being a law professor. And just being involved in those sections can be very rewarding. And again, if you simply show up and show an interest, people will connect with you. Also, in many sections differ in their level of sophistication, I suppose, and Clarissa at AAS can attest to this. Some sections are very sophisticated, and it takes a while to become very involved in that section's hierarchy. Some are less sophisticated, and you can find yourself very quickly moving up in the hierarchy. But many sections have committees And one way to get involved is simply to attend the meeting and then to follow up and volunteer to be on a committee. And that's a great start. And eventually you'll become a co-chair of a chair of a committee. And then eventually you may end up in the leadership. And the last point about simply getting involved is if you get on the list, if you join a member, become a member of a committee, you end up on the discussion list, like the listserv for that committee, which is where really a lot of the information is communicated. And you can find out when there's a call for committee members, or when there's a program that you might want to attend during the year. So those are just a couple of thoughts.
Great, thank you, Tim. I think that was really very helpful and really informative. Thank you, Mark. Judy, anything you wanted to add about leadership or committee participation?
Just to underscore what was implicit in what's been said, some sections do what they call a business meeting or organizational meeting just before or after their panels. Some do it separately, and you'll find them in the program. So if you're interested in more engagement with the section, be sure and go to the business meeting.
Great, thank you. And I know that some of the committees that, some of the sections I'm in, I think they're also doing it in their networking. They're doing it during their networking sessions. So it's a slightly, because we're online, there's a little more opportunity, I think, to have different structures. So very good, thank you. So I think the logical follow-up question to that then is, I'm not really interested in a leadership role. So what other opportunities might be available for me? And then maybe as we talk about that for some of our participants who are either senior staff or administrators, what opportunities might be available for those people who are in our meeting? And I think, Judy, I'll start with you, and then we'll go to Erwin.
Great. Well, we all know at our own schools, and it turns out it's true everywhere, that there's a group of wonderfully talented and able people who aren't members of the faculty, but who are so important to the functioning of the school, whether it's admitting the students or counseling the students or assisting the students with their job search, or making sure that your work is prepared in professional form and distributed. So they're with us at this meeting. And when you look through the list of sections, you'll see a number of sections are designed not for the scholarly faculty, but for these important functional areas. One of the most interesting is the institutional advancement section. So that's the development people and the alumni folks and communications. And they do almost a meeting within the meeting during our annual meeting. So there's definitely a place, whatever your interest, you are welcome and part of it. At AALS, you're part of the faculty meeting. We think everybody belongs because we know everybody makes the law schools function as well as they do.
I totally agree with Judy. I have to confess, I never aspired to be in a leadership role of AALS. I never aspired to be a law school dean. It's a long career, and there's opportunities that develop along the way. For me, I initially became involved in AALS by attending the conference, being part of a section, and then in time did become in a leadership role of a section, got asked to be on planning committees for conferences for AALS. And the more I learned about AALS, the more excited I got and the more I wanted to be involved in the organization. So if this is your first AALS meeting, probably like me, it's premature to think about, well, being in a leadership role. It's now just trying to figure out what AALS is about. So Jason, in answer to your question, and as Judy said, there's so many ways of being involved in AALS. Coming to the conference each year. I think I've been to almost every AALS conference since 1981 because of all the benefits that I mentioned earlier that I get from it. Enjoying and being part of the sections. Many sections have email listservs that are an opportunity to connect with colleagues. Many sections do scholarly paper presentations and submissions. The sections often are involved in doing things between the conferences. And of course, there's the presentation of the conference each year at the section. I so agree with what Judy was saying about LLS is an organization of law schools, and it includes all of the law teachers and all of the administrators there. And there are the sections for those administrators and the opportunity to learn from each other, and also the contacts that administrators can make with those in similar roles at other law schools that come from this. So my hope is that many of you are on this call over time will come to be in leadership roles of LLS, but whether you are or not, I think that LLS, as the Scholarly Society for Law Schools, as the voice of law schools, is the organization for law schools, really has a place for every law teacher, every law administrator.
I'll just add, because I see we have a post in chat from Tracy Thomas, and she just makes possible this meeting. So we're delighted to have her here. And she's pointing out that every day they've scheduled section networking sessions between 2 and 3. And as Mark reminded us, that's where a lot of these business sessions will take place. So by all means, if there's a section or a couple that you might be interested in, that's a good opportunity to stop and visit and find out more about them. Secondly, more and more sections are focused on mentoring. Now I'm bumping into the next question a little bit, but I'll mention it. So there's lots of things sections do besides put on the meeting at the annual meeting. They're getting better about sharing curricular materials with everybody in the section. Maybe there's a new Supreme Court case and you'll get a discussion going in your section about approaches to teaching the new decision. But mentoring is a big one. And so they're setting up opportunities really throughout the year, as well as at this meeting, for more senior scholars to say, yeah, I'm really interested in being here for a more junior scholar and vice versa. So it's a great way to connect outside your own school.
Thank you, Judy. Which segues us into our next question perfectly. So thank you for the transition to both Tracy and Judy for the networking, because the next question is something that I also dealt with. Is I'm not very good at networking. So how can I go about finding a mentor outside of my institution? And I think we've touched upon that a little bit, but Judy, if you'd care to elaborate on any of the points you raised, and then I'll turn it over to Tim.
Well, I'll just add, sections have been so creative about it. They've been doing some speed mentoring in some sections. You know about speed dating. We do speed mentoring. So you sort of move around the session, certainly in person, a little harder to do virtually. But more and more sections have realized that this is something that technology can facilitate, because you can be connected to a mentor who's, a continent away, but will be a great resource for you. And it turns out, Erwin said this earlier, I'll add into that group as one of the older faculty members present. We love being approached by other faculty who may have a question about something in one of our books or articles, or would just like to talk about a particular hard subject. So absolutely connect through the mentoring programs of the sections.
Thank you. Tim?
Well, like Erwin, I'm quite shy, but I think that recognizing that everyone is interested in meeting you as an attendee and talking about whatever subject your area is, or simply about being a law professor, that's the way to kind of break through that. Also, in just listening, I think one way to think, don't think of just simply this as one shot, one meeting, and think of it as a series of meetings and also throughout the year. So this is the beginning of maybe your relationship with AALS. And the more you meet with people, the more you get to know the different sections and leadership of those sections, then you can keep having touch points throughout the year and then again next year. So I think that's one way to kind of approach the meeting, not as if you will suddenly know everyone, but that you will simply circulate and learn more and find out what sections you're interested in, and then follow up during the year.
Erwin?
The one thing I'd add, which follows from both of those comments, is that you're not limited to just the AALS to reach out to people. At least for Judy and I, we started teaching before there was email. And now, thanks to email as well as other means of communications, it's so easy to reach out to people in your field. And I often have people who are using my case books reach out to me with questions or to send me drafts of articles or just to raise a topic they want to talk about. And I so welcome that. And so one way of getting mentors beyond the AALS is take advantage of just sending people emails and writing to them.
That is such good advice, and it's true even for someone who's, and I've been teaching for a few years now, going into my 12th or 13th year. But even for me, it's difficult. Like I sat at a panel and I was teaching Civ Pro for the first time, and I sat at a panel, and then you know, one of the presenters was Brooke Coleman, and I was so interested in what she had to say, and yet I wrestled still with sending her an email. I'm like, you know, should I do this? Shouldn't I do this? And then I did, right? And she was, as everyone has said, extremely receptive, wrote me back right away. I mean, I don't think more than, you know, 6 minutes passed before I got a response from her. And we went back and forth and had a little bit of a dialogue about, you know, what I was thinking about the class. And so, you know, even now, after doing this for a number of years, there's still that, you know, that hesitancy. And, you know, the other thing I would mention about that is, you know, when you're in person, hopefully next year we're all together, you'll see groups talking together. And I always hesitate to walk up to that group, right? There's a group of people talking and I feel like I shouldn't intrude on that group, or I shouldn't walk in and be, but, you know, as soon as you walk up, they make space. You know, you walk right in and you're in the group and you start participating and start talking, and it's, you know, it's instantaneous almost. So I encourage, please don't hesitate to do that, to join the group. Mark, please.
Yeah, that's just so true. I had so many experiences like that. I wanted to echo that. You sort of walk up and you know, here online, you've got your screen, you can identify yourself. Even in person though, when we are back in person, you'll have a tag, so you'll be immediately identified. But the thing I want to add also is just remember who we are. You know, we all are a little, we're bookish. We like to study. You know, as a group, and frankly, the law has a certain conservative nature to it, where we like to study and then figure out what's precedent. You sort of, it's a field where so many of us as academics, we are all feeling a little bit like this. Like, can I go talk to this person? Can I go talk to that person? So just understand, we would love it. Those of us who are on this panel here, and those who you may think are senior to you and wouldn't ever want to hear, we would love it. And understand, we have all been, and everyone around, we are all folks who love to study the law. We love to dig into it. We love to sit with a book and close our door. That's our nature. Like most law professors really are like that in some fashion. So, you know, you're not alone, and you're going to be very welcome.
I just to follow up on that, a lot of the section work actually happens after the meeting as we get ready for the next annual meeting. So sort of February, March is a very busy time at AALS. And that's a time where you can start getting involved in a section. And I know every section leader would welcome contact. And AALS on its website, when you go to the sections, you can find who the leadership is, and you can simply reach out to those people, and they will warmly welcome your email and probably want to get you involved, because there's plenty of work to do.
Thank you. I would just point out also in line with that in the chat, encouraging junior faculty to reach out to the second section leadership to ask if sections provide mentoring. Many sections do. And then I want to also congratulate Emmanuel for being the first person to chime into the chat and introduce himself and put a note into us. So welcome, Emmanuel. And again, if anyone has any questions or thoughts they want to put in the chat, please feel free to put those questions in, and I will be happy to share them with the panel. All right. So let me then turn to the next question. And I'm going to address this to all of our panelists, and I'll start with you, Mark, and then we'll go to Erwin, and then Tim, and then Judy. What has been the most impactful opportunity that AALS has provided you?
I mean, I have to say at this moment, as I am about to, I guess, yeah, barring the circumstances that Erwin mentioned before, that I will be the president-elect in a couple of days, and I'll be able to serve as president. That is just an extraordinary opportunity. It's an honor, frankly. I guess it's an opportunity, but it's an honor. And the opportunity it has multiple dimensions. One is just being able to hone, develop, exercise my own leadership skills. That is an opportunity which I think is professional, of importance to me as a professional, to be able to say, to be able to be in the front of the room, so to speak, and to be able to help steer this great organization. Judy is an extraordinary executive director. The staff there are phenomenal. I know that Tracy is on, and there's others who are on. Clarissa, we mentioned before. It's an unbelievable group. So I'm not running the place as president-elect or president. I won't, but the leadership opportunity, that's just a gift to me as a professional. But also it is something where I feel like it is great opportunity for me to help steer us in terms of where we're going, and to think about how I can help us as law professors, as law schools, help us do what I think is extraordinarily interesting and very important work. Particularly, today is January 5th. Tomorrow is the anniversary of one of the darkest days in our nation's history. And I think that we have a responsibility and a role to train the students who come along to make sure they're engaged in serving as lawyers. And that service requires us to serve our nation. We are a nation that is committed to the rule of law. And I think we as law schools can help make sure that folks understand the importance of the rule of law going forward. So that's just to say that I think helping law schools and law professors, that is a gift and an opportunity that ALS has provided me through this particular position.
I was going to say the same thing Mark did, but not nearly as well as he just put it. Just how tremendously honored I am to get to be the president of AALS, how humbled I am. I'm going to get to do remarks on Saturday. And one of the things I'm going to say is I looked through the list of who prior presidents had been, and I feel like I'm the answer to the Sesame Street question, which of these people doesn't belong? And it is an opportunity to be a part of helping to shape the AALS and its policies and influence legal education. And I certainly echo everything that Mark said with regard to the praise of Judy and the entire AALS staff. They were really terrific. I think then to say something a little bit different than Mark in terms of the most impactful opportunity, I would say it's the people that I've gotten to meet through the process. I can think of people who I met at early AALS conferences through the sections who have become colleagues and friends throughout my career. And I could name names of individuals who we were young law professors at the beginning and formed bonds that have lasted over the decades. Certainly what I would say has been the best part of being the executive committee of AALS is getting to meet wonderful people like Mark and Judy and Vince Rougeau, the outgoing president, and Darby Dickinson was the president before that. And it's really the greatest joy of being part of AALS is when the people who I've gotten to meet and work with.
I would obviously agree with those comments. And I think the impact, we've talked about mentoring is whether it's formal or informal, it's connecting with people outside your university. And when I've been on a committee or with the leadership in the new law professors section, it's been connecting with people at different universities all across the country. And, whenever you try to schedule a conference call, there are only a window of hours you can do that because of the time change. And it's that connection with people all across the country, I think, that has been most impactful for me.
Judy?
So you asked what has been the most impactful opportunity, and my brief answer is I'm sure I haven't had it yet. If you were listening earlier, I mentioned my annual meeting attending in 1972. So I realized this makes my 50th annual meeting. How time flies. If I had to pick out one, it would be in 2006. It was the year I had the privilege of serving as president for that year. And an invitation came from China, from their Ministry of Education, and they wanted a small group of law professors and deans to come over to discuss closer cooperation between the law schools in China and the law schools in the United States. Now, I am certainly no expert on international law, much less Chinese law, but by virtue of being in the role that year, I was invited to be part of the delegation because they paid attention to titles. And it was a fascinating 5 days in every way. But I remember in particular a conversation with several of their law school deans, many of whom had attended law school here in the United States, and began discussing the merits of, this law school versus that law school. They were so well informed. China has about 600 law schools to our about 200 ABA accredited law schools. So to give you some perspective. One of the deans who had and talked about, he appreciated the education he had at an American law school, said, we're very good here in China in our law schools. Our graduates know vast amounts of law. They have really memorized huge swaths of law in our system. But we realize you Americans, you do something different. You seem to be teaching your graduates how to analyze and solve problems in new ways. That's not what our law schools have done. And we want to better understand that, which is why we'll be sending more of our students to American law schools so we better understand it and can make appropriate changes in our law schools. And I went back to my teaching thinking, I never thought about the fact that as one law professor at one of the American law schools, I was having some global impact because of students. So I would say that really brought it home for me. And I hope it does for all of you, because we are all engaged in this enterprise of producing the future by training lawyers of the future.
Thank you. I'd like to open up those were the questions I had for our panelists. Is there anything, panelists, I haven't touched upon that you want to share with the group before I open up for questions from the group? We'll see if we can get any shy attendees to share with us. Please, Mark.
Yeah, I just would say one thing as people start to populate the questions. I have received 2 direct messages here, one from an old friend and colleague who I knew before I was a law professor, and then she and I both worked together at Seton Hall, and she's been a couple places, so that's great. And from one of our former VAPs. And I think it's just, I'm happy to hear from them. And but I also would say just use this moment. Like, don't hesitate just to do this. If you see anybody, including all of us on the panel, but if you see anybody you think you think you've heard of, you met them once in a Starbucks, I don't know, send them a note. Here is a good time as well. You can see it's starting to fill up a little bit in the chat room, a few, but I assume people are using some direct messages, but in case you're not, I'm just telling you, I've gotten a couple, and please use that function as well.
Thank you. Tim.
Jason, I'd just like to talk a little bit about new law professors section, because I think that's probably very relevant for everyone on the call or on the program.
Please.
The section on new law professors is really for new or newish professors. And a lot of our members of our section are actually experienced law professors who really enjoy interacting with newer professors. We focus on the three areas of focus: teaching, scholarship, and service. And one thing that's really important, I think, is to recognize that we are open to all faculty, and that's whether doctrinal, legal writing, which is where I focus on, clinicians, tenure track, non-tenure track, visiting, whatever one's status, we're there for you. The types of things we've done during and this is important too, it's not just the annual meeting. During the year, we had 2 webinars, one in the spring, which was about how to construct and grade exams, and then one in the fall, which was about how to select textbooks. And then in this, I want to note that our program for the section is on Friday at 11 o'clock, and it's titled "The Delicate Dance, Balancing Competing Interests in Making Decisions as a New Law Professor." And we have a terrific panel, and I encourage everyone to attend that program. And also encourage anyone who's interested in being involved with the section, you can email me directly or anyone else on the leadership, and I will get your name to the right person.
Thank you, Tim. That was really helpful. And thank you, Tracy. Tracy just put in the chat the AALS spotlight on the new law professors, and there's a newsletter, and you can click on that link and see the article that was written about the section. When I joined AALS, I joined that section, and as Tim indicated, the name is a little misleading. It's new law professors, obviously for our new law professors, but there are quite a few, as Tim has mentioned, law professors who are in leadership or in the committee, mentorship opportunities, a lot of outreach and support, and they're doing even more. And thank you, Tim, for this year, because the 2 webinars you mentioned, I think were really well attended and well received. So thank you for that. Other final thoughts from our panelists? Any questions from our attendees? Thank you all for sharing in the chat, making connections. I think that's, you're taking the advice to heart. So I think that's great. And I hope you are, like as Mark said, reaching out to each other directly. I received a private message asking how to identify section leaders. They are listed in the AALS handbook, which has a great deal of information about the AALS and committees, but the information is also available on the AALS website. Judy, did you want to add anything else about section leadership?
The website really is the up-to-date page, and it includes previous award winners for each section. And increasingly, sections are doing newsletters as well as mentoring programs. So you'll find a lot of information on the website. So join a section, and even if you don't want to join, go take a look. We don't have swipe right and left yet, but it's pretty interesting.
Hey, Judy, if I could just emphasize the importance of getting on the discussion list for the sections, because again, that's where a lot of the communication for each section occurs.
If I could add one thing that may be obvious, and it's simply the word "to enjoy." We've talked about all of the instrumental benefits of coming to AALS conference and what to do when you're there and how to establish mentoring. And those are enormously important. But I have to say, the reason I come back to AALS conference each year is because I enjoy them. I enjoy the sessions. I enjoy the chance to know people. And I hope that for each of you, this conference and all the ones in the future will be a really enjoyable experience. Thank
you, Oren. Let's see. Question, are there any sessions of the annual meeting that you would recommend that new law professors attend that aren't marked as new professor? I think that Tim, maybe you want to start off with
I would
that?
say anything that interests you, and as everyone says, that brings you joy.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say, you know, obviously, if there's the ones that interest you for your section, obviously what you're teaching in, you know, going to those sections. And then I also look for just things I'm interested, you know, we're all intellectual, right? And we're all curious, hopefully, about different topics. I like to go to panels where sometimes I know nothing about the topic, but it just sounds interesting. And I'm gonna go and listen and hopefully learn something new. I think you know, hopefully you'll attend the meeting and enjoy and meet people and have, you know, have a good time with it. So, and then someone did ask if there was a recording of the how to construct an exam webinar, and that was posted in the chat that there was. The replay of the webinar could be found at a AALS link that is posted in the chat. And it's a new law professors, how to better construct and assessment and learning. Another question, I have a general question concerning, oops, I'm sorry, I just lost the question. I have a general question, the difference between section discussions and subject matter listservs. I am new to the property law community, and I am wondering if there is a property, I'm sorry, let's see, I'm having a hard time reading the question.
Let me jump in on that one. The
Yeah.
language is a little confusing because we all use the word listserv, but it turns out it's trademarked. So our discussions in sections are called discussion lists. Means the same thing as listserv, but complies with trademark law. And we thought we certainly as a legal organization should be doing that. Some of the sections have separate discussion lists. I'm thinking of the con law section has one, several others. So it may not be the only discussion list in the field, but each section does have a discussion list. Yes.
Thank you, Judy.
I'll add a couple more while we're thinking about it. Not too long after we finish up, we're doing our annual awards ceremony. And it includes a terrific presentation to Kimberly Crenshaw, who is the winner of the Lifetime AALS Triennial Award today. So that's one you might want to put on your It's Worth Visiting list. Tomorrow, 12:35, Thursday, Michael Sandel of Harvard is talking about his most recent book with Vince Rougeau as our president, and that's our presidential program for the day. And then Mark mentioned this really fascinating program. Tomorrow is January 6th. That's on your book. And tell me what time and the title again, Mark.
Sure. It's 4:45 to 6 o'clock. The book is entitled Beyond Imagination, January 6th Insurrection. And it's 14 law school deans, including Erwin, who is here. 14 of us who wrote a book about our perspectives on what happened a year ago.
So a few things to add to your list, if you have time, of programs to visit this year.
Any other questions from our attendees? Yes, and in the chat, some of that information we've been talking about has been posted by Tracy, the different panels and the times. Well, then let me say on behalf of myself and the attendees, thank you all panelists for an excellent and informative session. I really enjoy moderating this, and I feel like I learn something new every time I sit with all of you. So thank you all very much, and have a very good meeting to all of you and to all of our attendees. I hope you enjoy your first meeting. If you have any questions, please, reach out to any of the panelists. You can email us. You can find us on the bios, the website information, or on our faculty websites. Happy to answer questions at any time. So thank you very much, panelists. Thank you very much, attendees. Everyone have a very good meeting.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.